Institute of Technology, and I'll be gradually guiding us through today's session. These particular Inspire events, we run them regularly. So for people that haven't attended one before, we run them quite regularly. The aim of them is to bring together some interesting thoughts around technology and developments that are happening across the East Midlands that are really relevant to either our technical industries or learners on technical pathways in the region. We like to bring elements of research that are happening in region, things that are very current in industry, and what's happening in terms of the development of the learning kind of environment to help make any of those things happen. And this is part of a two-part conversation we've been having around hydrogen. In the last session, we discussed some of the national drivers that were shaping the growth of the hydrogen economy and hydrogen energy proliferation across England, and also the national skills framework and plans for distribution into the region. Today we're going to be looking far more closely at production, what's already happening in the region, and opportunities to scale that, the sort of sectors and industries that are most engaged, and how some of the research that's happening in region, it's great to have Dani here, is really starting to look at some of the challenges of integrating hydrogen effectively into a multi-energy vector system for the region and actually for the country. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot, I think, to be aware of. We do have other events, so please keep an eye out. If you've attended this and you've signed up for our newsletter, we'll keep you updated on them and more information on how you can actually sign up for updates towards the end of this session. Very, very briefly, and I always like to touch on this, the Institute of Technology is really a vehicle for improving and increasing the take-up of technical education in the East Midlands and making sure that the technical workforces that are learning and developing in region are well aligned to the industries that we have now or that are developing for the future. So we're a partnership between multiple education providers and multiple businesses that represent the sectors that are very strong in this region, and they're all shown on the screen now. And we focus very much in digital engineering of all disciplines, but also with a focus on energy, which is why we're talking about this specifically today. Professional construction, and across all of those, strategy and leadership, how businesses need to start to think about their leadership of their industrial leadership in order to adopt new technologies, new systems, new energies, whatever that might be, and to lead that change effectively. We are one of 21 institutes of technology up and down the country. We've collectively received a huge amount of government backing, and we are there to very much increase the total volume of learners who are pursuing technical careers and pathways. We are there to grow, in particular, incremental and short burst skills opportunities so that we can better connect the populations that we have locally into the technical occupations and industries that exist across the region. And that's everything from T-levels, but with a pathway all the way through to master's level delivery. We are very focused on building higher technical qualifications, so making sure we're that sort of bridge between colleges and universities and that lifelong learning agenda in that technical sphere. Just before I introduce our first speaker, I just want to touch on some work that we've already done and why this is particularly pertinent. We've worked with Loughborough University, HyDex and Dr. Hanlin Lee to do some research in region. That we published this last year around a training needs analysis for hydrogen skills in the region. And that identified a lot of the gaps, challenges and opportunities that we've got in preparing the region's workforce for a hydrogen-powered future. The key findings of that report, and I won't go into it in detail, but there were some top high-level things. The first was that the East Midlands energy infrastructure and its literal positioning in the country makes it a central hub for high energy industries such as manufacturing and logistics. And because of that, we're a cornerstone of the future of hydrogen production and distribution in the UK. We're very well positioned to be that, building on the huge amount of certainly electrification infrastructure we have in region, but also that whole positioning and our focus of our economy just makes hydrogen very important, both now and will be growing in importance going forward. In terms of demand for hydrogen skills, this training needs analysis really started to look at the kind of way in which hydrogen skills are being advertised. I've got a dog barking in the background. Can everybody hear that? Apologies if you can. This report started to draw on live skills that were being advertised right now, and what was really clear is there is already a demand for hydrogen specific roles in safety, regulatory compliance, infrastructure development, and part of that leadership to help integrate hydrogen into existing businesses. But what also showed was that there is very limited provision of hydrogen skills, even at an introductory level, throughout particularly lower level skills pathways, whether that be engineering or other types of undergraduate programs all the way from T levels. And that what this does in practice is it limits the number of people who might be entering the workforce who are able to then pivot and take more specialist learning later on as the hydrogen economy grows. So there is something for us about educators to really think about how we're embedding some of that content in anticipation of a growth in later demand. So the recommendations were get those modules in right the way from T levels onwards, start to improve awareness for both our learners, the existing workforce more broadly, industry leaders, and our teaching workforce of hydrogen, its potential applications and how it needs to be reflected in the curriculum. And lastly, making sure there is a much closer collaboration between education providers, policymakers and industry to ensure that we have a real good line of sight of what's happening in hydrogen and that we're preparing for it and being more dynamic in our upskilling efforts as we go forward. So lots of things coming out of that, and at this point I think it's really helpful for us to pass on to our speakers. So the first person I'd like to hand you over to is Professor Dani Strickland. Dani is Professor of Electrical Power Engineering at Loughborough University, and has been very closely aligned with us at the IoT and really helpful in helping us better understand what's happening in hydrogen energy and research for the region. So Dani, are you happy for me to hand over to you?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel. If I just share my screen as well. Oh, yes, there we go. Share. Okay, are you able to see the slides? So
yeah, that's great, thanks.
I'm particularly focusing today on the research and innovation side. And so I'm just going to give you a brief background of where we're coming from and some of our research. So in particular, I'm going to start with my research just very quickly and then go on to some of the other research at Loughborough that's happening in this space, which I don't know quite so much about, and then just what this means from a learner perspective and how this sort of feeds through. So in the UK, obviously there's a big push for net zero, but when you use electricity is not necessarily when you generate it. So for example, you might generate lots of power during the middle of the day, but use it in the evening when there's no sun shining. And so there's a requirement to sort of deal with that. And what you find is that many people oversize now their renewable energy so that they're generating much more than they could use to help even this out. For example, one of the implications of this is that we've oversized our wind farms in Scotland, because Scotland's a nice windy place, but we're at the same point, because of grid stability issues, we're having to curtail them. So there's a lot of renewable energy assets out there that aren't necessarily being used properly. On the other side of the world, there's different problems. There's a big shortage of electricity, and in addition, particularly related to things like hydrogen, there is problems with polluting fuels. So you have people who are potentially they're using fuels, charcoal, and it's exacerbating health conditions. And there's some quite frightening figures about how many people actually lack access to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa. There's a lot of research about battery energy storage. For example, this is a good way of using that excess energy and storing it. And there's also a lot of research on electrolyzers, which take potentially excess renewable energy and turn it into hydrogen. The problem is that batteries, once they're full, you can't charge them anymore. And electrolyzers don't always operate very nicely with renewable generation. And also there are issues with potentially precious metal use. So leading on, this is really my area of research. So what we do is we have a research into a battery electrolyzer. It's a single device that allows you to operate both as a battery and an electrolyzer. So it can charge and discharge as a battery, but when the cell is overcharged, it produces hydrogen. And we've designed our system so that we separate out that hydrogen from the oxygen, which occurs when you pass electricity through water. We then collect the hydrogen gas and we compress this, and it can be used. And because it's based on lead acid technology, it's very flexible, can be used very easily with renewable generation, as it has done for many years. We mostly use off-the-shelf components. So we work with battery manufacturers, Mombat and Hoppiger. And we use, for example, Hoppiger boxes, terminals, and their lead and lead oxide plates. And we create our own cell design using their off-the-shelf components with some additional components, which is a separator and a 3D lid structure. Our cells work really well. We have greater than 99% purity. Our electrolyzer efficiency, when we have some catalysts in there, is 71%. Charge efficiency is 80%, so very similar to what you get for a battery. And when we have 160 cells, which is our current design, we get 20 litres per minute. And this seems to be flicking on without me, so I'm not sure what I've clicked. Yeah, that's better. We have a small manufacturing plant that was made viable thanks to East Midlands Freeport as part of the East Midlands Zero Carbon Innovation funding. And this is allowing us to make cells so that they're both at sort of small scale, but also so that, oh my goodness me, but also so that they can be manufactured consistently, so we get good consistency of results. And this is just showing our line with a cell manufacturing and then a cell assembly area. These cells go inside a 20-foot shipping container. This is the model of it. So you can see that the cells stack up in 4-row heights on either side. So we have 8 lots of cells and 20 cells going along. And the back, we have some gas panels, a control panel, and this is the electrical side. And then to the side, we have a purge panel that enables us to purge with nitrogen. So we have the cells, collecting them through the electrical system. The gas goes through into this side of the container where it's compressed and stored. This is our first pilot in the real world. We're very excited about this. This was commissioned in November last year. It's a container in Malawi as part of the MESH project. And what it does is it provides hydrogen for cooking. And here we can see the local population trying their Falcon hydrogen cooker for the first time. So I would say that our research very much is about taking low cost materials that are not precious metals or are very abundant, and turning them into things that are potentially useful. So it's not the same performance that you get from an off-the-shelf electrolyzer, but it's something that's a lot cheaper, a lot more recyclable, a lot more easy to scale. And I think that sort of underpins quite a lot of the research at Loughborough. And there are, you know, a number of good points about the research that we do. This is just some of our partners. I think that one of the lessons to the learners out there is it's very difficult to do research on hydrogen without partners. And the more partners you can get, the better, because really you're getting that whole wealth of experience from a whole range of people. And that is very invaluable. And as a team, it makes working towards a goal more pleasurable, and also just much quicker. So outside of my research, we have the Doctoral Training College, which is about research more at PhD level. We work with a lot of partners. That the theme of the CDT is accelerating the affordability, scalability and sustainability of green hydrogen and wind energy. This is just some of the examples of some of the projects. And again, they've got this ethos of low cost, abundant material, trying to make things better, trying to move towards net zero. So we have things like producing green hydrogen from seawater. We have sustainable fuels and solid oxide electrolysis cells, transporting hydrogen, all the way to sort of component level, so lab on a chip. So one of the things that we have in our system that's quite expensive is we have both hydrogen and oxygen sensors. So we're looking for if our hydrogen and oxygen is forming an explosive mix. And so having something like a lab on a chip that enables you to do that very cheaply would be incredibly valuable as a cost reduction pathway. So it's not just about, you know, big fancy containers full of stuff. It's also about the components that go in that. And then we've got some solid oxide electrolytes and some pre-ignition risk analysis and combustion engines. So what I would say to any students out there is there's a real raft of R&D in hydrogen in the region. If you want to get involved and you have a degree to 2-1 or a master's, you know, and this is what the kind of thing you'd like to do, please do get in touch. And then really what I would say that we sort of follow through with the CDT is that the CDT is slightly different from a PhD because you have this sort of skills and taught content. So you have a year to 2 years of learning different things that we think are important that you will need. This is the kind of thing that we help our students to pick up through those first few years. So we believe that health and safety and standards are very important. Obviously, hydrogen's explosive. So we would encourage you guys to understand about DESIR, understand about things like HAZOP process, and really engage with IGEM, which is a national institute, it's the Institute of Gas Engineers, but they have a Midlands base. So they have a number of standards which people use within their design, and they're very open to students having access to that and having the help. Practical design and build skills we feel are very important. So we do things like wiring, we do basic plumbing, swage lock, workshop skills, soldering. So we try and encourage all of our PhD students to have that practical skills base. And then more soft skills, so test planning and commissioning skills. How do you write a test schedule? How do you plan to commission something? How do you sort your documentation so it looks like what you'd need in the future? There's no point just doing research for the sake of it. You need to understand whether it's actually going to make money or whether it's going to be beneficial. So you need some element of understanding of economics, and you need to understand how it's going to be taken up. So some element of social studies. So these are all skills that you can be gained outside of courses, but are really valuable for what you might need in the future. Along with that, for us and the PhD, renewable energy, systems engineering, networking and grant writing. So those are kind of very much more to do with sort of PhD type skills. So yes, that's a whistle stop through the research at Loughborough side of things. There's very similar research at Nottingham through the Sushi CDT. That's not recruiting anymore, but there are interactions with those students through combined CDT events. And we're hoping that the IoT students will come to Loughborough and help us with this year's design and build. So thank you.
That's super. Thanks, Dani. There's the one question that's sort of going through my mind is, you know, that whole issue around the generation of electricity versus when we use it is a national problem, isn't it? How scalable to a kind of national agenda, because you've talked about low cost and quite localized interventions here, is some of this thinking also translating into how we take that into a national picture, and can hydrogen form a part of that sort of that mitigation of peak flow and demand production?
Yes, I think it has to, Rachel. I think that we, particularly if we want fuel security, I think that hydrogen is going to be part of the solution here, because particularly winter, you need a lot of fuel for heating. You're not generating as much solar generation. There's a gap. You know, things like sustainable aviation fuel, there's a gap. So I think that I think something is needed. I'm fairly sure that hydrogen is going to be part of that solution of what's needed.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's kind of segues us on very neatly, actually. So obviously, in terms of actually ensuring that hydrogen is part of that energy security for the country, and energy is very, very pertinent to all of us right now, and that whole issue is affecting everybody. We won't go into why and how, but it's never has it really been more stark how important this transition is. But obviously all of that is going to depend on the creation of the infrastructure and the markets and the supply chains to be able to get that hydrogen produced, distributed, and to integrate it really effectively with what we have as a strong electrification network at the minute. So at this point, I'd really like to invite Matt Barney. Matt is Chief Hydrogen Business Officer at GeoPura, and I was very fortunate to have met Matt and had a bit of a tour at GeoPura, which was fascinating, and you were very, very informative, Matt, at the time at the last East Midlands Hydrogen Conference. So if I can hand over to you, Matt, or would you take us forward about what's been happening at GeoPura?
With absolute pleasure, and thank you, Rachel, and thank you, Dani, as well. I'm going to try and share my screen.
And just for your information, Matt, because I know you were here right at the start, we record all of these sessions because a lot of people can't make them in person, but they do view them afterwards. So it's great that you can come and that you've got some slides to share.
Well, really, really happy to be here. More than happy for you to record and share as appropriate. And also, for those that would like to visit the site, please get in touch. We're very happy to show folks around. But can you see my screen? I'm presuming you can see my slides.
Not at the moment, no.
Oh dear.
Do you want me to? I have a backup copy. Do you want me to share that? You do then.
Let me try one. Let me try one more time.
Okay.
Nothing like competent. Okay. Now I think you can see something. Right. Although,
if you can put that on.
Just 1 second, I've got to add sound. We'll try again. We will get there. Yep. Fantastic. You should be able to see something.
Yeah.
We're there.
Happy days. And I'll make that smaller in the corner as well. Fabulous. So yeah, Matt Barney, I actually live in the East Midlands. I live right under the flight path of East Midlands Airport. Grew up here, had my life here. I actually moved here in the 1980s. My dad was responsible for coal deliveries to all of the Nottinghamshire power stations, working for British Rail. And so quite incredible now to be working and producing hydrogen at one of those former coal-fired power stations, High Marnham, here in Nottinghamshire. I actually sat at High Marnham today. But a little bit about the story of GeoPura. So Dani, your last comments there about commercialization and where we need to get to. So GeoPura really has been a vision, birthed actually out of Nottingham University as well, but to commercialised hydrogen, both use of hydrogen, so in our case, hydrogen power units, generators effectively, that are using hydrogen to create electricity at any place, anytime, at any scale, but also then the production of hydrogen, so making that green hydrogen, that renewable hydrogen to feed the generators. Just trying to move the screen on. There we are. So the model that we came up with at GeoPura, if you can see in the middle of point 3, you'll see a box there that says HPU on it. That stands for hydrogen power unit. We developed and built actually the first hydrogen power unit here in the East Midlands in South Nottinghamshire. So these are hydrogen fuel cell based systems, 250 kilowatts of power, so quite a bit of power in there. There's some battery in there as well, and some UPSs that distribute the power. So this is critical power, and this gives you all the benefits of your old diesel generator, but entirely zero emission and also way more reliable. So it's critical power that you're getting from a hydrogen power unit. And our vision was to build these, manufacture these, and get them out into markets, supporting, so you can see at point 4, construction, festivals and events, EV charging, anywhere there's that need for power where the grid can't quite get to what you need, or you're in a remote location where there's no grid at all. A hydrogen power unit can be used to integrate with the grid or completely standalone to get to whatever power output you might like. And so been brilliant to be building these things and getting them out to a whole variety of different customers. But that quickly meant that we discovered that we ran out of hydrogen and couldn't procure certainly a cost-effective level hydrogen for our own use. And we also weren't too keen on importing it from Europe, which at the time in 2019 where we started, that's where all green hydrogen supplies were really coming from. So that's led us also into at point 1 there, hydrogen production using renewable electricity to create hydrogen at scale using water electrolysis. And then obviously we've also had to invest in the A to B of how you get hydrogen from where you produce to the hydrogen power units. So we've also got a fleet of trailers, tube trailers, that help us deliver the hydrogen, get it across the country, indeed across Europe as well. Really great to have been joined along this journey with some fantastic players, Siemens Energy, who've been a collaboration partner from day one, but also some other folks who've supported GeoPura's journey, including Barclays Bank, Swen, General Motors, and also the UK National Wealth Fund. And it's been fantastic that the commercial model that underpins what GeoPura is doing enables us to make real baby steps, stepping stone steps of growth, both on getting hydrogen out there in terms of electricity generation, but then also that hydrogen production to support. We've been able to raise, getting on for £200 million over the last 6 years to help us support this journey, with some really solid players behind us who also believe in what we're trying to achieve here. You can see there on the left, the HPU, our first system that we built, as I say, here in Nottinghamshire. We've actually built about 80 of these now. These are all being manufactured by Siemens Energy up in Newcastle upon Tyne. So this is growth for UK jobs, for UK supply chain, all this stuff being built here in the UK and put together. We've also produced these mobile units, so these are the original HPU, but with hydrogen supply on board. We use these a lot of times for folks like Netflix, and where we might be filming on a TV set in one day and then another set on another day. This provides a real plug and play ready solution that can provide power within minutes at customer sites. And then recently, actually last year, we launched HPU 2. So this is the same footprint as the original HPU 1, but it actually has 5 times the power. So this is built really to support primary power for applications such as data centers, where the grid just cannot keep up. This provides an entirely scalable, entirely renewable solution to meeting those power demands of very power hungry entities like data centers. And then really excited as well to be about to launch this year the Agile. This is a smaller towable, tow this behind an SUV vehicle, 80 kilowatt, so a smaller system. This really to displace the kind of little diesel gen sets you might see at small scale construction sites at traffic lights and so on and so forth. Couldn't have got here without our wonderful big brother Siemens Energy. As I say, this is in Newcastle. If you're in Newcastle, give us a shout, come and have a look at where we're manufacturing. This is actually where the steam turbine was first produced that supported all the coal-fired power stations across the UK, indeed around the world. And so huge engineering and electrical power generation legacy at this site. But you can see we're slowly encroaching across that facility and manufacturing HPUs at scales, and really thrilled also to have, along with Siemens, in a hydrogen apprenticeship program in play. We've got 24 hydrogen apprentices. Now 3 years in the run, so 24 hydrogen apprentices coming online each year, and we also have a graduate program as well working there up in Newcastle, so really fantastic. These are a few of the customers, great names that we've been privileged to work with. In every case, people like hydrogen and they like not breathing in the toxic gases you get out of a diesel generator exhaust pipe. Funny that. But they also like the reliability aspect, as I mentioned, and the fact that these systems are super reliable. So if you're doing live TV, for example, we do a lot of work with the BBC, winter watch, spring watch, autumn watch. Traditionally, you'd have lots of diesel generators running just in case your primary generator went down, as often happens with the diesel gen. Not needed with a hydrogen power unit, because the reliability factor is so much greater with it being hydrogen fuel cell and no moving parts. So to give you an idea of some of the customers that we're working with, some great events and festivals across the UK, some really great well-known artists like Chapel Roan at Lido, and last year this was a BST, you can see there on the right hand side, quite a moment for the whole hydrogen industry really, supporting Neil Young, the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, Cat Stevens across 4 days, 65,000 people in attendance there at Hyde Park at the Summertime Festival. All that power on site coming from hydrogen produced here in the East Midlands, green hydrogen. If you attended, you would have had no idea other than the fact the air was that bit cleaner. And if you're on the production team, you've been delighted because, again, that reliability that you get from the HPU is a real addition to live performances and shows. And then also working on construction sites, Belfer Beatty, we've got a 5-year framework for the supply of hydrogen power units. So if you work for Belfer, you can call off a HPU just as you would a diesel generator. It can be on a construction site supporting whatever activities you might be doing. With utilities, National Grid, Northumbrian Water, there's all sorts of opportunities to displace diesel generators across a variety of sites. And I think I already mentioned film and TV. That's been quite a mainstay of work here at GeoPura, working on some productions really well known, like Bridgerton and The Diplomat. Just last year as well, Downton Abbey. We actually powered, I think, 900 hairdryers on one of their production sites where they've got 1,500 extras. It's quite phenomenal how much power is used in making some of our great film and TV shows. There's a short video here, which we will try and play.
There's power in the stories we all tell. But what about the power that goes into bringing these stories to life? While diesel generators have long power productions across the entertainment sector, Netflix is testing a new, cleaner approach: hydrogen power. Alongside other technologies like batteries, hydrogen power units generate safe and reliable electric power, benefiting production crews and surrounding local communities by reducing air pollution, toxic fumes, and carbon emissions.
That's hella cool.
So how do they work? These machines convert hydrogen into electricity, and unlike diesel generators, the only byproduct is water.
It's actually water that you can drink.
And we're already testing this technology on hit Netflix shows. From The Diplomat, Season 1, powering the entire base production with green hydrogen for weeks.
What works well is it's seamless. It feels like it was a normal base run by diesel generators, but in fact we're using clean energy.
And Bridgerton, which used green hydrogen to power cast trailers and work trucks at the studio for the entire 3rd season of production.
We've had positive experiences with the hydrogen cell. It's really well received by the crew. It's powered the unit base really successfully.
To Loughborough, Part 3, which was the first French production to test mobile hydrogen power. After successfully integrating hydrogen power into recent productions, we're working to expand our use of this clean tech across future productions.
It's our first time using hydrogen, and we would definitely use it again. The whole experience has been super positive.
Because here at Netflix, our mission is to entertain the world. And that requires a habitable world to entertain.
Oh, forgive me, I'm trying to move on the slides. Oh. It was working so well. We've got a little crash. We'll just restart, forgive me. I've got a couple more slides I would just like to share if we can get them to restart.
Try pressing N on your keypad.
It doesn't like it.
No. Oh.
It's only a minor glitch. We'll hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can do it. I'd like to show you the next slide just because I've got a little bit on High Marnham, which of course you are welcome to come visit, as I say, but for those of you that won't make it, I'd just like to show you. Oh gosh. No, unfortunately, I think I've completely crashed.
Sean, are you able to share?
I was going to say, would you like me to
Sean,
drop in the spare and
yes,
we can
please.
do as I say,
I'd
next slide, please, a la Chris Whitty. Just a moment with me.
Very grateful.
That's all right.
It's a bit of a throwback.
I know. Show my age, aren't I?
I unfortunately can't even get off my. All I can see still is my Netflix screen. It has actually crashed.
Bear with. Bear with.
Ah, PowerPoint. Let's close that down and hopefully I can at least see you.
Click. No, go past that. I think that is the slide.
Hooray!
You're right. That is the
Knight in
slide.
shining armor, Sean. Thank you.
That's
Great.
right.
Shall we press on?
Yes.
Brilliant. So everybody can see that slide, then I can see hydrogen full value chain. So this is what's going on here in Nottinghamshire, High Marnham, the former coal-fired power station site. We are producing hydrogen at scale. So this is a alkaline technology. They're 1 megawatt electrolyzers. We've installed 16 of them here at High Marnham. So we've got a 16 megawatt facility where we're bringing in electricity at the moment through private wire from a neighboring site where they're producing renewable power. And we're using that, obviously an electrolyzer with water, and we're making hydrogen at scale. And then you can see some of the containers on the middle picture that we're using to transport that hydrogen. So we've got a range of 20 up to 40-foot containers holding up to 600 kilograms of hydrogen in each unit. And these can be used to support hydrogen power units. Typically, one trailer would last a HP or a customer deployment for a couple of weeks. So you've got a lot of power in one of those transport vessels. And at the bottom there, you can see the 8 loading bays where we're producing the hydrogen and filling those up to support the applications with our customers. This is actually the third site that we've built. This is the third. We've built a site in South Yorkshire and one in and another one in Nottinghamshire as well. That's a picture there of High Marnham as it was. So at the point 2012, when the power station was demolished, you can see the old cooling tower bases there. But the red line shows you the scale of the site overall. So it's a huge former coal-fired power station site. You can see the rail heading as well coming in there, and the River Trent. The wonderful thing about this site is it means we could scale very quickly, actually up to a gigawatt of production. So utilizing the grid head that's here, and we're thrilled to be in conversation with folks at GB Energy, who are obviously looking at very large scale production of energy from offshore wind and from solar PV. Many days a year we're overproducing that energy, and so the potential exists at sites like High Marnham to use that old grid head that used to export power from the power station to input back from those renewables and produce at scale. So our vision here, and we've working closely with folks at Cadent Gas as well, who are quite keen to utilize some of that hydrogen through their pipeline network, because at gigawatt scale, it's a different order of magnitude than just transporting out through tube trailers. So looking at pipelines, but also using that railhead with Network Rail to support actually getting up to the gigawatt production in potentially the fairly near future. Next slide. I don't know what. Have you moved the slide on, Sean? I'm still on the last.
Yeah, we're on. We've just seen the one with JGB.
And so you're on in the heart of the East Midlands. I'm sorry, there's something really
We're
very
now
wrong
on
here.
the High Marnham site. Yeah. The aerial photo.
So you're probably somehow one ahead of you. Just tell me what to say at the top. You're on High Marnham, are you?
Yeah. High Marnham Power, and it's the area, as Rachel said, it's the aerial view.
Right. So sorry, I was talking to that side. There's something very wrong here. I'm seeing the slide ahead of you guys. So if you go to the next slide.
Next slide, yeah.
So that should be
now
slide.
In the heart of the East Midlands, slide 14.
You're wonderful.
Okay.
So in the heart of the East Midlands, so there you can see the 1 megawatt that we've already built on the bottom cooling tower base, and then we're planning on putting in a further 30 megawatts in the coming months. So hopefully in the next 18 months, we'll be scaling that. And you can see again the economies of scale kicking in. We're doing this on a more industrial basis. So it's using the same area footprint, but actually having potentially twice the capacity using larger electrolyzers. So all very encouraging stuff. Next slide. So there's an aerial shot, which I hope you can see, of what's built. Again, if you come and visit, you can see it in person. And just to say, so one of the lovely things that we're now able to support is much larger. So because it's reliable, it's credible, it's happening, it exists, and it's here in the UK producing. We've been thrilled to recently win a contract with Highways England supporting a Lower Thames crossing. So the UK government through Highways England are building a major, this is a £13 billion construction project, down building a new crossing across the Thames to relieve some of the constipation of traffic on the M25, being built by 3 contractors, and as part of that the UK government have made a hydrogen supply contract available that GeoPura were delighted to win. So this is providing hydrogen and refueling for 5 years of that construction project, which will afford and enable the delivery of hydrogen infrastructure, so plant and equipment and generators to truly decarbonise at scale, and also provide support for EV charging, so the scale up of battery electric construction equipment as well, where the grid can't supply the needs. Hydrogen is the mechanism to do that. I mentioned Network Rail and the possibilities on slide 17, if we could go there, Sean. And thrilled just before Christmas to do a first movement of hydrogen by rail. I think this is the UK's first, again showing the interest that there is from other players to support. And then if we could go to the next slide, RAF Waddington. Again, the RAF doing some brilliant stuff with the MOD. They see hydrogen as being absolutely critical. The MOD have been here for some time, by the way. I know we're currently facing a bit of an energy crisis at the moment around the world, but the MOD have been very keen to actually be able to produce and have security of their own fuel supplies, and hydrogen enables them the tools to do that. And we've got some wonderful things going on with both EV charging, providing site power across UK bases, but also looking at areas potentially like the Falkland Islands, where there's lots of wind available. You could easily produce your own hydrogen at places like that, and then save the massive transport costs and of course the carbon costs, and most importantly the fuel security and unreliability of having to ship fuel from Europe all the way down to somewhere like the Falkland Islands. So huge potential there for folks in the armed forces. Next slide, and we are coming to the end. So Tilbury is what you can see. This is
slide, yeah.
Yes, please, and we are there. We'll end on this one. So this is our most recent, so really thrilled again. This happens to be adjacent to the Lower Thames crossing site, but to have an electrolyser now down on the Thames. So this is the Port of Tilbury. This is the UK's third largest port. It's part of the Fourth Ports group. So Fourth Ports responsible for import and export of almost everything that comes in and out of the UK. Huge aspirations to decarbonise ports and shipping, both supporting charging of vehicles and electricity supply to boats and vessels in port and at dock, but also all of those forklifts, the reach handlers, the massive diesel currently operated equipment that moves shipping containers around sites. You name it, there's so many applications where hydrogen would be so much better, would provide that resilience, and also again give you that security that you can produce your own fuels locally to support commercial activities that we all of course rely on and appreciate in maintaining our everyday lives. I think we'll end there before we have any more mishaps with slides, but really lovely to be here today, and thank you so much for your interest. Come and have a look.
Matt, that's really, really helpful. Thank you. Just from a couple of reflections from me, the scaling from 15 to 930 megawatts is ambitious, isn't it? It's huge. What sort of timelines are you looking at?
It's so when I've been really privileged to be involved with GeoPura actually since before we began in 2019. So I've known the folks who started our chief exec Andy for many years. Actually, he lives in Weissel down there in South Nottinghamshire. But initially we were looking at spreadsheets back in the early days of what we thought we might achieve, and you know, it didn't seem believable or credible. We were talking about, could we get a 250 kilowatt electrolyzer up and running, and we did that, and it was a big moment. It felt massive. Then High Marnham of course feels huge, 15 megawatts. It's tiny. We're not even, you think how much fuel is used in the country every hour, every second of every day. We're not even scratching. This is still tiny scale. What's exciting is that the commerciality, the model that sits behind GeoPura, is enabling that organic growth. And it feels like the foundations are now in play to rapidly expand from where we're at. The infrastructure that we now have, the expertise that we now have, not just us, there's lots of others as well who are doing some great stuff in this space. It feels like that moment, that tipping point could be here where we could scale very quickly. So folks like Siemens Energy, General Motors, they have the capability, in-house capability, to basically, if orders are placed, to build. So we could get very quickly to a gigawatt at this site and others as well. So Tilbury, we mentioned there's 1 megawatt at the moment. There's another power station just like High Marnham down at Port of Tilbury demolished, has that same opportunity. So not only here at High Marnham, there's lots of locations where we could get to a gigawatt really quickly, as long as the commercials stack up and there's that belief from the wider economy that this is something sensible that we should be doing. And with all of that curtailed energy that the country is currently wasting, vast quantities of it, this has to make sense, particularly in a time of political instability and ever dwindling resources from elsewhere in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there other industries that are really starting to latch onto what other industries are buying hydrogen, not necessarily to use in HPPUs, but are you selling it into other industries for other purposes?
So we're in the lovely position at the moment where we're producing slightly more than we actually need for our own use. Is set to change, which is why we better build that 30 megawatts I was talking about. But for the next 18 months or so, we have got oversupply. So yeah, thrilled to support anybody. Again, our interest in hydrogen is trying to get production maximized across the country, and indeed across Europe, really. We want to have the lowest cost molecules, the lowest price of production. So our selfish interest at GeoPura is to support others who are trying to do the same thing similarly as us. So if we can help supply hydrogen now for the projects, this is always this chicken and egg thing with hydrogen. Where is the hydrogen going to come from to meet this use? It doesn't exist, and vice versa. There's no use, so we won't put in infrastructure to make the hydrogen supply. If we can help overcome that and bridge that in the short term, we will. And so we're supplying hydrogen to a few other folks, other people in the hydrogen supply chain and economy as well, probably working seamlessly behind the scenes. You might be getting hydrogen from us. It makes no sense at all to be transporting molecules hundreds of miles if there's another location 20 miles down the road that we must work together. This is all about collaboration at this point, because we're trying to get an infrastructural change. That means low cost molecules, ubiquitous supply across the entire country.
Yeah, really good. And how much is it costing? Where are we aiming to get to on the cost? If I wanted a bucket of hydrogen, how much would it cost me?
A bucket's going to cost you far too much. So the honest answer is, when we started, we were paying 70 quid a kilo for green hydrogen. That is mad. You cannot make any commercial model stack. It's ludicrous. If you were to buy a bucket from us, literally a couple of kilograms, we very happily supply you, it's still going to be expensive. It's going to be something like 30, I think we advertise our spot price every week, about 36 quid a kilo, something like that, I think, this week. So that's good, because it's half what we were paying 5 years ago, but it's terrible if you compare that to the price of diesel. But the good news is, if you want to buy more than a bucketful, so if you wanted to have a small quantity, let's say 20 buckets, but you were willing to commit to that over a long time frame, and so we could get economies of scale in that supply and just get a little bit of order in how we deliver to you, we can get the price down below £10 a kilo. And at this kind of price point, you really are starting to say, well, this is competitive with diesel. Why on earth would you not do this? And so it's incredible. I can't really believe that we've reached this point, but it's happening, and it's happening. And I keep saying we're only doing this at a tiny scale. Really, it's bigger than anybody else has done thus far, but it's just the beginning. So the potential to further capitalize and get the cost even lower very quickly, I think, is there. And Lower Thames Crossing is massively one of the key drivers in helping achieve that.
Yeah, super. I can see in the chat we've had. Sorry, Sean.
Hey, I think you were going to announce the same thing, really. I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Dubari says that he'd be interested in taking the students for an excursion to your, I believe, the High Marnham power facility. So if that's feasible, I can certainly sort of put the two of you in contact. It's not a problem.
100%.
Maybe that's something we do for the IoT generally. We could look at organising something, I think, across all the sites and get some IoT learners there. I think it'd be really exciting for them to see the development. We'll be in touch. Yeah.
I did have a question of my own, actually, Matt. We've talked a bit about the energy crisis and obviously the problems in the Middle East. I wondered, as somebody who's particularly focused on business the business end for GeoPura, if you'd seen a sudden spike in interest from companies over the last month or so, given the problems of the world.
So I wouldn't say that suddenly there's people beating us down at the door more than they were before. I think there is more of a you know, the people vaguely are aware. People, you know, if you're buying large scale fuel contracts, you're often hedging, you're buying in advance. So there's always that awareness that fuel prices do this. But there's nothing like when you're actually in that moment and it's done it, and you can definitely feel that sense. So whereas people before were, yeah, this was a good idea and we're thinking about it, there's an increase, the same number of people, but they're saying how quickly can we do this, and let's actually start doing something rather than just talking. So we have seen the same folks we were talking to now saying, let's get on with it rather than leave this for 18 months away. So it has made a difference, there's no question.
Dani, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. So Matthew, I'm sort of interested in the electrolyzer side of what you're doing, and I'm assuming you're buying in your electrolyzers. Are you starting to see problems with supply of electrolyzers and long lead times?
Electrolyzers have been a nightmare. There's another whole presentation just on that. So initially we were going to use Siemens electrolyzers, but the electrolyzer, their smallest model that we kind of banked on in the early days, they very kindly withdrew from the market after we'd placed orders for them. So we were left somewhere between a rock and a hard place. Siemens then introduced us to a company called Green Hydrogen Systems, because the scale we're at is fairly small scale. The market was small and we needed a small scale but reliable system. So we went with the Danish electrolyzers, GHS. They're 1 megawatt class electrolyzers. They're really neat bits of kit. They were actually designed by Siemens 25, 30 years ago for submarine use. Long story short, we've ended up being the owning green hydrogen systems, and actually their staff are now part of GeoPura. So we have the technology for the 1 megawatt electrolyzers as kind of an in-house bit of kit, and we'd love to build a lot more of those for other folks. There's quite a few GHS electrolyzers that other people are using around the world actually, and so we're pleased to be able to support those folks as well. But for GeoPura, I think the next step would be bigger electrolyzers. So we're really keen, hoping that we can work with folks, maybe ITM. Be lovely to use some of their 5-6 megawatt class electrolyzers for our next entry point. Again, who knows where this will end up? We're driven by the need for molecules, and we have to supply the energy. We have to know that those molecules are there. So we'll probably do whatever it takes in terms of our board support to making sure that's there. And I don't know where that'll end up, but at the moment we're kind of hedging our bets. We're talking to a number of suppliers for those bigger electrolyzers, hoping that we can use ITMs. And if anybody's interested in 1 megawatt electrolyzers, come and talk to us. We've got one that works really well, and we'd like to build a lot more of them.
Super, thank you. We've got a note from Richard in the chat just saying be good to encourage Derby City Council to power the Darley Park Weekender with help from GeoPura. Maybe that's something between us we can encourage. That would be really good. And Jabari also put a note in here about is there any kind of breakthrough in use of hydrogen in a power plant? Do you want to say any more about that, Jabari? You're welcome to come off mute if you want to kind of say a bit more about your question. No, there's something not quite working there. So
right, okay. Yeah, so can you hear me now?
Yeah,
yes.
I can hear you.
Yeah. So I was just wondering if because I understand that the natural gas we use in the gas turbine is going out and if possible completely eradicated. So a research have been in the process of using hydrogen to replace the natural gas. So I'm just wondering if at the moment hydrogen have been replaced, because we understand the infrastructure for the hydrogen is a challenge. And again, in research world, we know that we are not going to decommission all the gas turbine we've got in the country. So I'm just wondering if the use of hydrogen in the natural gas so that it can meet the energy demand in the country could be utilized.
So I'm happy to have a go answering that. I absolutely think yes. I think that ultimately there's no way we're going to be able to wean ourselves entirely off all our natural gas networks. We're so dependent on gas. It's still by far the biggest contributor to our energy mix overall. Hydrogen has to play a role in that. And one of the uses of our small scale hydrogen has been supporting blending projects for trials across, with different folks, Cadent and NGen and others as well, in doing some further tests and trials on that. But ultimately, if you go back to these power station sites and the scale of them, they actually have the potential to become huge energy reservoirs, just like we built the water reservoir networks in the Victorian times in this country. We could be doing that now at scale, building our own energy reservoirs using curtailed energy. And at that kind of scale, you would get to the price point where it would facilitate, I think, the significant blending of hydrogen in gas networks. And I know folks at Cadent Gas, with their pipeline, that's exactly what they want to achieve. Perhaps if you come and visit, we should invite Kelly Manders on the same day, and she could talk about and answer that much more articulately than I've just done, with some real knowledge behind it as well.
I think you've done a really good job of it, both of you. I think what's really clear is that we can talk about hydrogen there's so many facets to this, and how it integrates with the rest of the energy system. It's amazing. We have reached 2 o'clock, and I know that other people have activities to go off to. Matt, Dani, thank you so much for joining us. I can see that there are more questions in the chat, but we will, if you've got any more questions, please feel free to send them through. I'll pick up with Matt afterwards about a potential visit up to GeoPura and High Marnham, and because it would be great to get some students up there to see it in practice, and I'll liaise with teaching staff across the partnership on that. Just text me. Thank you everybody for attending, and keep an eye out for future Inspire events. We'll try and bring issues which are interesting, relevant, and of technologically fascinating, quite frankly, for the region. It's been great to see you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.